Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and today I want to take you through one of the last characters I've made and will be making on the Breach League, which is the Elementalist with Elemental Hit as the main skill in mind, which inevitably turned into a Burning Arrow character. So the idea behind the character was to try and make Elemental Hit viable and see exactly how far it can go. As we all know, Elemental Hit totally sucks and doesn't really have many redeeming factors at the moment. It's got a sort of a steep mana cost, it barely adds any damage compared to what other skills could do, and it has no graphic, it has no real actual ability as such. It's more or less a default attack with a few extra pieces of damage, which is almost nothing. So the idea behind this character was to basically scale a default attack as Ignite Prolif with an Elementalist, and as you can see, it does sort of work, as just about anything Elementalist can. So the goal was to, though, try and make it work as much as possible through to endgame maps, or at least see where it stopped and stopped feeling good. And it was around tier 10s or so maybe that it just didn't seem worth it anymore, because slotting in Burning Arrow in the exact same setup was something like 3 times more damage. So it's just completely crazy to even try and do Elemental Hit seriously, like with a straight face. So it was more or less doomed to fail from the start, but I did end up turning the character into a pretty successful Burning Arrow character, which I'm rather happy with. As you can see though, Elemental Hit, put it in place of Burning Arrow, it's still going to clear maps, it's still going to do okay, but it has really shitty single target, and it really struggled to be justified in a setup. However, this is what the Burning Arrow version of the character looks like, and it ends up being pretty similar to the way I built my Fireball character, if anyone's been following that sort of thing. It's, Elementalist, Prolif, fire damage. It's 100% fire damage. The playstyle is pretty similar to the Fireballer, except you're of course using a bow this time around, but the prolifs are huge, the damage is huge, the single target is pretty big as well, and you're fairly durable because we do have Leech from the Duelist area, as well as Varpact and Ghost Reaver, and plenty of ES, so that, we're kind of tanky in the end, though obviously not as tanky as you could be, since we're just using a bow, don't have an extra 5,000 energy shield or so. That said, this character did provide me with some of the probably most enjoyable mapping for the Breach League so far, and it was a very nice character to play, something I'm quite likely going to revisit in the future, especially when there's going to be the Threshold Jewel that lets Burning Arrow stack 2 Ignites, because that's just going to pretty much double my output on single target, which isn't bad right now, but it definitely could be bigger. The Fireball character had much bigger Ignites, the Vortex character had much bigger Ignites. This one just played a bit smoother than both of those in my opinion, but it has worse single target, and that's something that will hopefully be fixed or, upgraded with that Threshold Jewel. So you can see I took the character through just about everything already at this point. I did go from, level 70 to 90 extremely fast, and straight into a few little Guardian maps. Now all of these were pretty badly rolled, so I don't have full demos for you guys, just little bits and pieces to show you what the damage looks like, what the playstyle looked like. I think they were all pretty much deathless except for the Phoenix, as you will see in just a second, because they were kind of toughly rolled though, and this Minotaur as well is a temp chains, added cold damage and area or some shit map, so it was kind of a bad map to run, but we did it anyway and still got through it pretty cleanly. So as you can see, the damage isn't that substantial when you compare it to my Fireballer or Vortex character, but it's got a nicer playstyle, and you can face tank if you want, which I did a lot of, but you can also avoid things and run around more like a bow character would. So the Phoenix, obviously unignitable, and that is a minor issue, but this character did it pretty well regardless. You can face tank him and leech back all of your damage, all of the damage taken straight away, so that made it just a little bit easier, and his initial hit is actually pretty strong. So every time I'd crit the Phoenix, I'd take off maybe like 5% of his health, or maybe 2 to 5% of his health. So all I really needed to do was stand there and face tank for a couple minutes, and eventually we would get the kill. Now the Phoenixes themselves, they don't leave corpses behind, so the prolif won't be there forever. It'll just prolif real quick to the current Phoenixes that are alive and maybe kill those. So it is still pretty efficient to kill them, but not as you'd expect with a prolif character. Now I managed to do one shaper run, and I don't have a clean full attempt for you to show you there. It did go down. It was still not entirely deathless, maybe 2 or 3 deaths because of my mistakes, but this is just a quick demo of how the run would go otherwise, just the first phase. It's pretty clean. I don't want this video to be too long though and show you all of it in its entirety. I'll just show you what more or less the damage looks like and how it can be clean. So the damage is there, the playstyle is definitely there, and hopefully next video that I make on this guy will have much more attempts, or much more full attempts on all of the Guardians, probably Shaper, and maybe even an Uber Siri, though that is not very good for Ignite-based characters, as I've mentioned many times in the past. However, the best thing about this character that I found was when we went to Chayula Breaches, it was a breeze. I've now run like 6 of these because I ended up buying a bunch of breach stones just for the sake of it, since it was that easy and that enjoyable to clear, and I happen to have a lot of currency left at the end of the league for some extra gambling and RNG to test my RNG, which by the way went terribly. My RNG was not very good there, but yeah, the breaches, the Chayula breaches, were very smooth. Takes a couple minutes to run them, and I was well ahead of time on the trash each and every time. It was probably the smoothest Chayula breach clears I've done this league, and the boss fight isn't anything too hard, though it's obviously not crazy DPS. As you can see, she doesn't die immediately. It does take a little bit of running around, and you can't particularly face tank her that well with the setup that I'm going with, because I have to face tank her, but when she keeps doing her spinning bullshit, it means she's going to take longer to die. So anyway, that is all of the clips. I will just go over real briefly, hopefully, what the character looks like and how it's managing to succeed. So I'll try and not make this a full guide, hopefully save it for the next video if I make one, but I will just go over how this character succeeds and how I've built it as a Burning Arrow Elementalist. So it is currently level 90, it is a Witch, an Elementalist, and the main passives we're taking are Shaper of Desolation, which is our Ignite Prolif, our Beacon of Ruin, which is the actual Prolif for all of our damage, Pendulum of Destruction, a temporary buff, which gives a bunch of elemental damage and radius, and then of course Mastermind of Discord, which we keep up with Orb of Storms whenever we want. So press Orb of Storms and you get 10 seconds of 25% fire penetration, which ends up being pretty damn good. So on top of that and Elemental Equilibrium, we have then 75% fire penetration and also fire penetration here. Much more fire penetration in the end, and this actually lowers the resists of a monster so that it takes much more ignite damage as well. So most elemental builds that try and scale ignite, if they don't have elemental equilibrium, they just won't be doing that much burn damage. They can do plenty of fire damage, but you just don't get as much burn damage out of a character unless you are lowering the resists of an enemy, which is why we have Elemental Equilibrium, and that we are triggering again with Orb of Storms, and as well as that with Herald of Thunder procs, just single target as they go down. But it is mostly Orb of Storms, and you may wonder if that screws over your damage a lot of the time because we are pure fire. Usually it won't, because you hit them with a single burning arrow or a large pack of monsters with a single burning arrow. Yes, they then become stronger to fire resist if you don't instantly reapply a Orb of Storms or a Herald of Thunder, but by that point you've already got your initial hit on, which will have a large amount of burn spreading to everyone else around the target. In any case, yeah, so the character is an Elementalist. It had to pretty much be CI, and it's built just by going around taking a bunch of proj damage, some crit, and yeah, all the way down here. So we do have some leech over here, which is pretty damn nice. The mana leech there too. We grab point blank, so whenever we're up close to a target, we deal immense amounts more damage for the initial prolif or ignite hit. So that does mean to deal our maximum amount of damage. Quite often we are going in for the face tank, and usually that's fine and doesn't get us in too much trouble. Now, like I said, I won't go over the whole character, but essentially how we're scaling Burning Arrow here is Burning Arrow converts half of your physical into fire, and then Signal Fire over here will convert the other half. So in the end we have 100% fire damage or fizz to fire conversion, as well as an additional bunch of fire damage on the Signal Fire itself. So we are 100% Burning Arrow fire damage. We have 3 arrows thanks to Death's Opus, and then with Dying Sun we have 5 arrows. And the purpose of that is you really do want an LMP or a GMP to be able to spread your arrows and hit multiple targets, but if you put an LMP or GMP into your setup, it cuts your burning damage by a substantial amount. So that's why we use a Death's Opus. Plus, Death's Opus is a pretty decent fizz damage bow with a huge amount of extra crit multi, meaning your initial hit of Ignite is usually going to be pretty large, and chances are larger than most other bows we can get, as well as the fact that it's got some very nice crit. So with Dying Sun up, you do have 5 arrows, and it's pretty damn essential to have a Dying Sun if you want some good clear speed, because with just the 3 arrows it feels a bit wonky. Certainly doable, but just not that enjoyable. So in the end, Death's Opus, you can use some other bows, but I think this is the best one for the build. And we have Burning Arrow attached to weapon elemental damage, fire penetration, and then you're going slow projectiles, then pierce, then less duration. So less duration shouldn't work on this thing, but it does because of threshold drills and all that. Regardless of that, we're using less duration to scale double dip once again the ignite and the initial hit on Burning Arrow. Otherwise we're just using added fire, but less duration does give more overall damage, even though added fire gives a bit more tooltip. Just keep that in mind when you're making your own Burning Arrow character. So that's pretty much the setup. I'm not at all using my second 6-link right now, it's just an energy shield chest, and I'll link all the gear in the thread that I leave for you guys with the gear and the passives. Lastly, I will mention I've been using Archula most of the time, but I recently swapped into a regular amulet because stun immunity really didn't seem to be necessary for me almost 100% of the time, so I only ever put on the Archula when I think I actually need it. This has been the Burning Arrow Elementalist for now, guys. Hopefully I'll have another bit of a video about this guy next time, but for now, it went pretty damn well. Maybe more of this in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.